Prepare to be disappointed because I did not hate Philip Crane. Let me be clear, he did so many things wrong. He did not know how to be a parent. He was not a good father to his children. He was not a good husband to Marina. And he was not a good companion or husband to Eloise for the majority of the book. But Philip's reasons for not being a good parent and for not being a good husband was based on his own ignorance and his own lack of having someone model good behavior. Philip knew when a behavior was wrong. He grew up being treated by his own father with cruelty and with harshness, and he knew that that was bad and wrong and made him hurt. And he was not going to do that to his own children, but he did not know what good behavior looked like. On a similar vein, Philip grew up without a mother. He only had his father and his brother to contend with, and his father was cruel to his children and very likely cruel to women as well. And Philip makes it explicitly clear that he never really wanted children. He wanted to kind of be the fun uncle who just holds himself away and pops in. But the only thing that his father modeled to him that he felt was actually a good thing was a sense of duty and a sense of obedience. And so he marries his brother's fiance when his brother passes on, and he fathers her children, and he doesn't know how to do it, and he doesn't know how to cope when the mother of his children doesn't seem to want to be in the world at all. And he does so many things wrong. He neglects his children, he neglects Marina because he just doesn't know how to cope with it. He doesn't know how to cope with anything because he's never had this model to him, and he doesn't really have much help. He's very isolated and very alone. And initially when I first started reading the book, I really didn't like him. I despised him, in fact. I really hate the trope of hating your kids as a fun thing, which isn't much of a trope, but still. I didn't like him as a character. I thought he was really unnecessarily cruel. And then they started delving into him, and I actually think he is one of the most interesting characters that Julia Quinn has written. I found myself being unable to hate him, partly because it's really hard to hate someone who hates themselves so much. But more than that, I can forgive ignorance if a person is willing to learn. And Philip's entire character flaw was based on the fact that he never had good behavior modeled to him. It was all based around ignorance. But once Eloise came into his life and he knew that he needed her because he needed good behavior modeled, he thought he just needed a mother to his children, but what he really needed was someone to show him that there are better ways to go about things. And once he realized that, he was more than willing to actually try. And it took him all of 2 weeks to realize this, because the book only spans 2 weeks. But the second a positive influence came into his life, a very strong, very opinionated positive influence, he was immediately drawn to that and immediately wanted to try to do better. So I found it really hard to hate Philip by the end of it, because all of his past horrible behaviors came from a place of self-loathing and not knowing what else to do and not knowing the right thing to do because he was never taught it. And this is not excusing any of his past behaviors. It's not excusing the way he treated Marina or the way he treated Eloise. It's just explaining it, and it makes it a bit harder for me to completely hate him as a character. The character I really felt got the short end of the stick in this was Eloise, because I think she deserved a better story than fixing a man. And as well done as I thought Philip's character was, I do think that whole trope of a woman coming in and fixing a man's trauma is tired. And it was a little bit tired reading it. Though I did think it was really funny when all the Bridgerton brothers come up and basically beat up Philip for dragging Eloise away, even though Eloise fully fled on her own in the night. And it definitely raised my opinion of Colin Bridgerton, who was there to be threatening but not violent, which just, you can intimidate people and show that you are a threat without actively strangling them. Essentially, my opinion of Eloise and Philip's entire relationship throughout the book is that Eloise deserved better than Philip, but that doesn't mean that Philip was necessarily a wholly bad guy. He did so many things wrong and he is still learning, but the fact is that he wants to do better, and he can recognize that what he was previously doing was incredibly wrong and harmful. Unlike other characters in the book who have had perfectly good behavior modeled to them their entire lives and have been well loved and well fed and well cared for, and yet still think that they have the right to demean and diminish and control and manipulate their partners. Don't know who I'm talking about. Benedict! Philip Crane is by no means my favorite Bridgerton love interest. I do think that Eloise could have done better, but the fact of the matter is that there is still an ocean between him and Benedict, purely because Benedict never really learnt that what he was doing was so awful, whereas Philip kind of always knew that he was doing something wrong, but he never knew what, and he was desperate to learn to do better. Unlike some people. Definitely the darkest Bridgerton book that I've read so far, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because I do think it's interesting to tackle these issues. But we move on to Francesca and Michael's story, which I don't really know much about, but I have heard is phenomenal, so thank you guys, you've set my expectations incredibly high.